This is day one of the 7-day countdown to the total solar eclipse on Monday, April 8th. It is also day one of the 7-day countdown of CERN 666, opening a portal in the heavens for their so-called science research. Are these things signs of the last days based on end-time prophecies, or are all these things simply a distraction? Well, stay tuned. We will be uncovering and answering that question, exposing their sinister agenda, awakening the people of the world, and preparing them for the great coming crisis. Greetings, Safe to Serve International, first-time viewers. Welcome to this midday power surge. I'm your host, Andrew Henriquez. Well, friends, today I have a special guest, Marie Diaz. She's a wife and mother, one who loves the Lord. She's also a reporter and a great researcher. You can follow her works. Her video playlist can be found right here on this platform. She spearheads Eyes on the Times. And when you watch those videos, you'll clearly see the signs that are pointing to the second coming of Christ based on current events and the work of spiritual and practical preparation. All the aforementioned points, she's going to be sharing with us what her research has unfolded. So welcome, Marie Diaz, to Midday Power Surge. You are no stranger here.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor, for having me here today to discuss some very important events that are taking place here in the world.
You know, we have been trying to go live for the past, 45 minutes? Well, as they say, good things come to those who wait. And by God's grace, we believe that what is about to be shared is really a life and death matter. So it's day one of the 7-day countdown. Share with us.
Yes. So it just really seems like social media is buzzing when it comes to the solar eclipse. And, I had to pause and think to myself, is this a distraction? Is this something that's worth noting? And I think as Christians, it's really important for us to pause and to ask questions and not to just disregard what we're seeing in the news. Jesus says that we're supposed to watch and pray. And so one of the things that kind of really caused me to pause and to really kind of dig into the solar eclipse is to see just how there's a social media buzz surrounding this event. And Pastor, I don't know about you, but I recall the solar eclipse that took place in 2017. I remember I was working, we put on the little sunglasses, we took a look at it, and we went about our day. And for some reason, there are so many events and different things that are taking place surrounding this solar eclipse that I think we should really dig into. One of the things that is happening is we see that there's a lot of cities and states, and even Canada, I read this morning, they're declaring a national emergency. And that's astounding to me that we feel as if we have to declare a state of emergency for a solar eclipse, whereas previously mentioned, right? This is not something that hasn't happened in time past. It just recently happened in 2017. Also, we're seeing that citizens are being told that they need to stock up, whether that's gas, groceries, going to the pharmacy ahead of time. This just seems abnormal, again, for a solar eclipse. Not just that, schools, businesses, they're all closing. Even here in upstate New York, my dear sister in Christ mentioned that she was told that they ought to work remotely if they have that ability to do so. We see that there's warnings of potential cellular outages, and the police, the National Guard is being called in. And to be honest and to be fair, there is going to be a large influx of visitors coming from different areas. And if you're a small town, it can overwhelm the system. But I just want to reiterate the point that we haven't done this in time past. So I'm just wondering what's taking place. And so these are just a few of the things that I have noticed that has caused me to kind of pause and to ask some questions about what's going on.
Right. I agree with that. I agree with that. Yes, I remember where I was. I was
Yeah.
actually here in Georgia doing a meeting that same weekend of August 21st. So why the hype and the extra preparation? Only God knows, and time will tell. And as I've always used this
Mhm.
theme to govern my life, and that is get prepared just in case. If we get prepared spiritually, especially practically and literally, and nothing happens, that's okay. At least we were prepared. But if something sinister, traumatic, catastrophic should transpire and we are found unprepared, we're going to regret.
Absolutely. And that makes sense. And nobody is here to determine whether or not something is or isn't going to take place. I think that we should pause. I recall back when COVID, when we started hearing, things that were happening in other areas. And, some may have chalked it up to nothing. It's just nothing. It's just something that's happening. And gradually the rhetoric increased. And, we don't want to make the same mistakes. And dare I say, I just want to interject this point here. A lot of people said that some of the things that were going to take place during the COVID crisis was conspiracy, right? Conspiracy theory. And dare I say, post COVID, we're seeing a lot of those things that were considered conspiracy theory is conspiracy fact. And so this is why, again, I think it's so important for us to just take a look at what's being said, from reputable sources and to go from there and see, draw our own conclusion based on the evidence that we're seeing. And so, kind of to segue a little bit, it's not just the aforementioned events, and things that the government is doing to prepare its citizens. But if we take another look at some of the things that other organizations are doing ahead of or even on the day of the solar eclipse, again, it causes me to pause and say, what's going on here? One of the things that NASA is planning to do is that they're going to launch rockets into the solar eclipse the day of the solar eclipse. That to me, that just doesn't make sense. And further, to kind of emphasize this point a little bit, what's a little bizarre about this is that they're not just launching these rockets, but the team or the organization that's heading the space agency that's heading this project, they go by the acronym APAP. And they retrieved that name from an ancient Egyptian god, and it's the serpent deity. And so these are these little nuances that are a little bizarre, and we're wondering why all of these events are taking place during the solar eclipse.
And this serpent deity is actually linked to Ra, the sun god.
It
I mean, that's
is.
very startling. It seems to
Mhm.
me that since the last, I would say, 24 months, we keep seeing Ra, the sun god, brought up in various media reports as it relates to combating climate change, as it relates to uniting church, combat the ills of society. And when we see these things, it's as if God is saying, notice the current events are all pointing to the enforcement of the mark of the beast. And that's where these things are tending. Out of all the titles they could have used, why use this one? Why use this one? And we know nature worshipers, they worship the sun. Nature and the sun is their chief god of nature. I don't believe it's coincidental.
Exactly. I don't either. I don't. And, you rightly stated, I actually, as you were speaking, I was thinking of that. We know that these individuals are nature worshipers. And also, it just reminds us of what happened historically. The Bible also admonishes us that we are not to be dismayed at the sun, the moon, and the stars. And these are things that the people in the world, that are opposed to God and truth and righteousness, they look to these things. There's this saying, they say, when the stars align. And so when there's something that's happening in the celestial bodies, they pay attention to those things, and they may use those things to their advantage, or just to carry out whatever sinister plan, plot that they're looking to deploy. And so that's why, again, as Christians, we take a look at these things and we determine whether or not it's worth our attention. And so in addition to that, so you just mentioned or just talked about the serpent deity.
Before you move
There's
on,
also another phenomenon.
before you
Yes.
move on, Marie, I just wanted to allow the audience to realize that from several perspectives, we're seeing all these roads are converging at one apex. So what are we addressing right now? We're talking about this NASA firing rockets up into the heavens to open up a particular portal to do only God knows. Only God knows. And it's linked to Ra, the sun god. That's one perspective, sun god. Then we have the social movement, socialism movement, all leading to resting on Sunday for workers. So we have two roads leading to the same apex. Then we have the religious side, the conservatives, talking about the demoralization of the world, even America. Church attendance is now declining. Let us now be discussing a law to force individuals to attend a church of their choice on Sunday. That's three roads already. Then we have the movement to combat climate change. The Pope and his minions, the merchants, are telling us Sunday is the solutions. Is the solution. So we have four different roads leading to the same solution, quote unquote. Then we just went through the pandemic, and they said once the world actually rested, not much movement and travel, that the carbon emission decreased. So now we must discussing 1 day a week, everybody rest. And that day is going to be Sunday to combat pestilences. All roads lead not just to Rome, but all roads lead to SUN worship. Who is writing the script? Back to you.
It's startling. It's startling. It's very startling. And again, we have to be vigilant. We have to be watchful and prayerful and make sure that we are able to discern the signs of the times. And so what I was going to mention is, in addition to this serpent deity project that's going on, there's another celestial body that occur on the day of the solar eclipse, and that is the Devil Comet. So there's going to be a comet that's going to take place in the evening, the same day as the solar eclipse. And so, again, I have to pause and ask myself, why is it that they're referring to these events using such diabolical, sinister names? Devil, comet, serpent, deity. All of these things cause me to pause and really take a deeper dive into these things, just to make sure that we're not missing anything. And while I'm actually thinking of it, it reminds me, and the organization that's actually going to be doing these things is NASA. And a few years ago, in 2021, NASA actually asked several religious theologians to come together. They were questioning them, and the reason why they were questioning these theologians is because they wanted to see what they thought their congregation's reaction would be should their individual adherents learn that there is life elsewhere, aliens. And I thought that, why is NASA asking the religious bodies their opinions and their feelings about aliens? And typically people don't prepare for something unless they have some sort of hidden agenda, or there's something that they're eventually going to implement. And so again, these are things that we have to take a look at, consider. And again, this is the same organization that's going to be launching rockets, and that have told us about the double comet. So not sure if you find that intriguing as well. I certainly do.
Yes, I do. And the headline says a devil comet is set to swing by the sun and could be visible during the eclipse.
Oh, wow. So that's interesting, right? To think that all of these things, and this is in addition to the things that we've already mentioned and how they're deploying um, the National Guard and things like that. And so there's just so many. And I think, and this is why I also ask myself, is this a distraction? Is there something else that's going on behind the scenes? And this is why they're drumming up so much attention and making sure that social media pays attention to the fact that they're going to be launching rockets and they're going to be doing all of these other things, and that NASA has met with religious leaders ahead of time so that we're trying to connect the dots and trying to figure out what's going on when really there's something else that's going on behind the scene. So, one of the other things that I've done some research on is something that's called CERN. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with CERN, CERN is a facility that's there in Geneva, Switzerland. It's underground, where you have scientists from all over the world that come together, and essentially what their plan or what they're endeavoring to do is to relaunch this Hadron Collider. Okay. And for those who aren't really into the scientific world, or this is kind of going over your head, to put it in layman's term, the Hadron Collider is really an attempt by these scientists to recreate the Big Bang Theory. And the purpose of this is because they're in search of what is considered the God particle. And so why are we bringing this up at this time? Is because yet again, you have another organization that is going to fire up this Hadron Collider on April the 8th, the day of the solar eclipse.
Let's hear what this reporter has to say here.
Right now, beneath the Alps, near the city of Geneva, Switzerland, there is a tunnel. And machinery inside that tunnel sends beams of energy in a vast circle, so big it would take you nearly 6 hours to walk around it just once. And then it crashes them into one another. That machine is the Large Hadron Collider. It's the world's biggest and most powerful particle accelerator, a multi-billion-dollar instrument. And here's the thing, it freaks people out. If you begin to type the words Large Hadron Collider into Google right now, one of the Google searches that'll come out asks whether it can destroy the world. Well, it hasn't done that. That would have been our top story. But as of this week, it has discovered 3 new particles which could help us learn how our universe was born and what its future looks like.
Marie, to that you say what? I would simply say, let's go to the book of Genesis and let's see how the world was born. All right? There you have it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, you went to Genesis, but not just that. It just seems, as if, again, these individuals are attempting to defy what we know is truth and what is logic. And so it just, and of course, CERN is something that is already shrouded in mystery. And when people don't know very much about something and they're doing this again during the solar eclipse. And there's also some other controversy that's surrounding CERN, because apparently the last time that they fired up this apparatus, there were some bizarre clouds that formed on top of the facility. And remember, the facility is underground. And so, of course, this is going to cause individuals' minds to, to run off and create some ideas in their own heads as to what the government or the scientists are attempting to do. And the last time that they turned this machine on, it was during an experiment which was called Awake. And some of the individuals that are discussing this experiment were saying, what are they attempting to awake? And so, the fact that bizarre clouds seem to form when they turn this machine on in and of itself is enough to cause some apprehension, especially as we're heading in to this solar eclipse. And so, there are still some other things that are associated with CERN that also is a cause for concern. And trying to show how there's a religious connection to this, I think, is also very important. So we talked about these clouds that were forming, but yet some are saying that CERN, the name CERN, actually is derived from this horned pagan god called Cernunnos. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And again, we see how there's the serpent deity where the devil comment, and now you have CERN, whose name is derived from this horned pagan god. And, of course, even though we know that, Satan doesn't look like, two-horned devil with a tail, but just the fact that when people hear a two-horned pagan god, that's normally what the association is. And then so you have that. But I think the one thing that kind of really caused me to pause is when you start looking at the logo of CERN, that in and of itself, is a little bit startling. And I believe that you should have a picture of that. The logo of CERN, if you look carefully, there are 3 sixes in that, right? And now that's biblical. And so that in and of itself, Pastor, is startling. So you have a pagan two-horned god, and you're firing this up on the solar eclipse. And so I don't know about you, but yeah, that doesn't sit very well with me.
Yes, I agree. And that's chapter 13 and verse 18 of Revelation 6:6. And again, out of all the letters they could have used to illustrate their logo, they chose one that can appear to show 3 sixes. Why would you do that? Why? Because there is a sinister agenda, alternative motive going on here. And you'll realize that on one hand, they say, well, we believe in Big Bang, etc. We don't believe in God. But on the other hand, you see them mixing certain forms of religion and spirituality. And those forms of religion and spirituality are not what the Bible promotes and condones. The spirituality and the religions are what the Bible condemns. They go into and promote the nature worship, the pagan gods, the gods of heathenism, the gods of mysticism. So the agenda cannot be good, holy. The agenda has to be evil, and it's going to lead to the annihilation of a large part of civilization. As we just heard in that video clip when the man said, can this machine destroy the world? Not yet, or else that would have been breaking news. And he just smiled and chuckled off. Just remember, in every, as they say, there's a grain of truth in every joke. And we don't run joke and play games with people's lives. In chapter 11 of Revelation and verse 18, God says, I will destroy them that destroy the world. And we see them building this machine. You say what? Continue. And I mean, this research so far has been enlightening as you are revealing what you have found. 666. And you know what's striking right now? Since the pandemic, Mark of the Beast has been trending. 666 has been trending. And now we have the solar eclipse. That's trending. And here comes CERN. CERN 666 and the devil comet. What's happening among us? Why would God allow all these things to be trending and colliding? As if God is saying, if I were to allow each thing to be presented, isolated, people will not be awakened. Hopefully, when we connect all the dots, then they'll realize something is more to this, and they will begin to focus and take heed.
Amen. Amen. And the Bible tells us that, has the children of darkness become wiser than the children of light? And, so you have individuals in the world who are taking note, who may not have, very much knowledge of the Bible, but as you rightly mentioned, they'll hear 666. So they'll hear certain things and they'll try to make sense of it. And I think this is why it's so important for us that have the truth, who have been studying the prophecies and have a true biblical understanding of what's going on, that we should be able to look at these current events, be able to call them what they are, and to be able to explain them to the individuals who don't know. And this is how we're going to win them to the right side. And so one of the other points I wanted to mention, as you were speaking of how, a lot of these scientists and organizations reject the true God, true righteousness, and yet they embrace pagan gods. So one of the things that has taken place with CERN is that they received a Hindu god Shiva statue, or rather it was unveiled at the headquarters of this institution. And so again, why would they, embrace something that is pagan or is supposed to be religious? And again, they have it at this facility that has a logo with 666 in it. And so there's a lot of controversy that is surrounding this statue, because a couple of years ago, and this is something that's reputable, this is not my opinion. You can actually look at some legacy media, such as The Guardian, I believe the Indian Express. Apparently, this event, which raises eyebrows, shows that there was a mock human sacrifice that took place at the headquarters of this facility. Now, to delve into this just a little bit, apparently it was supposed to be some sort of joke. And I don't know if that's just how the media was attempting to spin this news article. But the fact that they would even allow this to take place at what is supposed to be a reputable organization, something that's, supposed to be scientific, I think speaks volumes. And so again, if you have the time, I think you ought to look at this and to really question, why is something like this taking place at a facility like this?
As a matter of fact, we were going to play the video, because at the closing seconds of the video, you actually see that they were about to accomplish the task. Sacrifice, human sacrifice. Now, you stated this is on the legacy media's platforms. It's right there, Yahoo News, right? Do you know if it was coming from alternative media platform and we had a mock human sacrifice? They would have blacklisted it, in so many words, deleted that video and maybe terminate your account, flag the video, delete the video, strike your channel, remove the whole thing. And yet they are allowed to publish this and promote it. Why would they do this? Because they're sowing the seeds. The seeds are being sown.
Right. Absolutely. And so this again, this is going to kind of be my mantra today. I think we have to continue to pay attention and to go back and to research these things. And, truth be told, I didn't dig enough into this to determine what were the results of this investigation, whether it really was mock. I don't know that it was, or if it wasn't. And again, it's not my job to determine whether or not these things are factual. I'm simply presenting the evidence, and it's up to you to come up with your own conclusion based on the Bible and Bible prophecy. And so, there's
let me help you
a lot.
Let me help you out. We don't have to actually be there, because we know two things based on the Bible. Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9, the things which have been, those things shall be. In ancient times among the heathens, they had human sacrifices, and God had to warn his own people not to partake of it. And many of God's people, even many kings, participated in human sacrifices, causing their children to pass through the fire unto the god of Molech. and other heathen gods. So what happened in the past will be repeated. So we don't have to actually be there to know that many of these things, similar things, are happening today. Secondly, then I'll bring it back in. We have all heard of secret societies. One, Bohemian Grove, where they have all these things, allegedly, all these things going on at these places behind God's back in some woods, dark places. Who knows what's happening over there? Shallow graves, allegedly. So we know these things are going on. Human sacrifices. Now, what about their poisons into our bodies? Human sacrifices. Poisoning the food. Human sacrifices. Poisoning our water supply. Human sacrifices. Poisoning the air, which leads to extinction of the human race. Human sacrifices.
Right, Pastor. I think those are some very valid points that you're pointing out here. And, again, going back to what I had said previously, we know that they're dismayed with these things, that, they're sun worshipers. And so all of these things, if you really research it and look into it, it's connected. And so, there's a saying that says that all roads lead to Rome. And I think that we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the fact that the Vatican is linked to CERN. And so, if you do your own research, if you just take a look into it, there's some articles where the Vatican was invited to the Big Bang machine, which is CERN. And also Pope Francis appoints one of the God particle physicists to the Vatican panel. Now that's intriguing because Catholicism is supposed to be a Christian religion. I personally don't believe that it is. I believe it's shrouded in paganism. And yet they're embracing something that is anti-God. There's no such thing as the Big Bang Theory or evolution, yet they embrace these things. And so you have to pause and ask yourself, why is the Vatican involved with this? Why are they involved with an organization that supposedly had a quote unquote mock human sacrifice ritual taking place at their facility? If, we're supposed to shun evil, we're supposed to distance ourselves from anything of that nature. And yet you see that the Vatican not only went to visit the facility, but they actually are including one of the scientists in their panels. And so again, these are just things that we should think about and consider as we're moving forward.
Their fingerprint and DNA is always on the crime scene. Whatever is abominable and filthy, the Vatican's hand and fingers are in it.
It is. And so there's just, again, I just want to reiterate the point that there are so many things that are going on. And as we're looking at these things, it's really important for us to see if we're being distracted from other things that are more important, that should take our attention. Now, this is not to take away from what we presented, because as you rightly stated, Pastor, I think it is so important, regardless of what is or isn't going to take place on April 8th, that we make sure that we're prepared. And what does that look like? That looks like us making sure that we have enough food and resources and things available to us. Should we lose power or cell service? What are you going to do in those instances? If you're unable to contact your family members, what are you going to do? And so it's important, again, for us to look at these things, make sure that we're prepared, because God forbid something devastating should happen. Say there's a blackout, say the grid goes down, and you haven't made the necessary preparations. It's going to be devastating. And unfortunately, then you're at the mercy of the government. And I don't know about you, but I don't want the National Guard or the police or anyone telling me what I should or shouldn't do or where I can and can't go. And so I want to be prepared ahead of time. And so the reason why I brought up the fact that this could potentially be a distraction is because, in case you're not paying attention, there are so many other things that are happening behind the scenes that I think also deserve our attention. Anciently, there's a saying that's called bread and circuses. And what the Romans would do is they would do things to kind of appease and to keep the attention of their citizenry, so that they weren't looking at what was most important, which was like the economy was failing, or they didn't have enough food and things like that. So one of the things that I want to bring up is that recently we saw how there was the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. However, I'm almost certain that most of your viewers are unaware of the fact that there were 2 other bridge incidents that have taken place. And so I don't know about you, but that's a little concerning to me. And I don't know if I can chalk that up to just something being coincidental, and so there was supposedly a spontaneous combustion, that caused a massive fire underneath a bridge, the Valley View Bridge. And then there was another incident that took place, I believe it was in Oklahoma or Arkansas, where a barge ran into one of the pillars underneath the bridge. Now, thank God that the bridge didn't collapse, or, they were able to reopen both of the bridges. But you have to, again, within a week, there's several incidences regarding a bridge. And again, I'm wondering, okay, well, what's going on? Are they attempting to cause issues with our supply chain? Is this some way ahead of, April 8th? So that if something does take place, that people are able to leave the cities. And these are just questions. These are just things that I'm asking, or when I'm doing research, that I'm wondering, like, what's going on, and so, and in addition to that, there was one other incident that just took place where there was a huge chemical spill, fertilizer.
Hold on a second.
For a stretch of, I think.
Following some breaking news right here in our area, a large fire right near the Valley View Bridge. It's happening at the Kurtz Brothers Landscape and Supply Center in Valley View.
Yeah, News 5's Mike Holden on the scene for us all morning long. Mike, what's the latest? Any progress out there?
Guys, it's windy, it's rainy. Trent McGill called for it right at 6 o'clock on the dot, and we're now in the middle of this as the smoke and flames continue to shoot into the sky at that Kurtz Brothers location. This is all playing out in Valley View along Canal Road, and if you look really closely, it appears emergency responders continue to move closer and closer to that large burning pile of mulch. The issue, though, as the winds kick up, that smoke just blows sideways, and I want to pan a little bit over photojournalist Dave Kraska to show the always busy 480 Valley View Bridge. In particular, if you were heading to work, maybe school this morning, the eastbound side is where you're going to get a whiff of it and you're going to say, whoa, this looks like a very serious situation. Now,
Well, some tense moments in Oklahoma after a bridge was struck by a barge yesterday. That bridge spanning over the Arkansas River was temporarily shut down after the collision. The Sequoia County EMS officials said that they didn't know what caused the crash, but said that the left side of one of the barges hit a pillar under that bridge. Oklahoma Department of Transportation engineers inspected the bridge afterwards and determined that the damage was superficial.
You know what? I know what happened. I could tell you the difference. The difference was the bridges in Oklahoma are made better than the bridges in Maryland. Tongue in cheek.
Well,
liquid nitrogen fertilizer spill kills nearly 750,000 fish in Iowa River. Marie.
Iowa's Department of Natural Resources continues to investigate a liquid fertilizer spill that was in Red Oak.
Yeah, that spill has now made its way into the Missouri River and in the state of Missouri. KATV News Watch 7's Jessica Perez joins us in the newsroom with the investigation and cleanup efforts. Jessica?
An estimated 1,500 tons of liquid nitrogen fertilizer spilled into a drainage ditch after a valve on a storage tank at New Cooperative, an agricultural company, either broke or was left open overnight. Then it flowed into the East Nishnabotna River. Crews made mounds to stop further flow into the river from the storm drainage ditch, and floodgates have been closed in the aftermath of the fertilizer spill. Meanwhile, the work to assess the damage continues.
It has led to a fish kill from Red Oak all the way to Hamburg.
Fish have washed ashore both in Iowa and Missouri. Fisheries in both states are investigating the species, size, and amount of fish impacted. In Red Oak, even the tiniest minnows have been found dead. Brent Martins with the Iowa DNR says they were on site within an hour of the spill. He's sampling the water, looking at oxygen and ammonia levels. Preliminary tests didn't look good.
All right, Marie, it did not look good.
Again, it doesn't look good. And the thing is, why aren't we getting, bombarded with information about these events that have taken place? And this is why I keep saying, the solar eclipse, is there something more sinister that's going on? Are they attempting to divert our attention elsewhere so that we're not making the necessary preparation? And so we have to then do our own due diligence. We have to make sure we're researching, we're praying, and we're staying ahead of the game, for a lack of a better way of saying it. And so, of course, those aren't the only things that are happening. This presentation would just become really lengthy if we were to cover all of the things that are happening. I could mention the fact that our economy is collapsing and that there's things that are going on the global playing field where, if you look at our relations between the United States, NATO, and what's going on with Russia and China, and how there's some articles that have come out that they've said that, Americans here, in China are actually should be on guard, or I can't recall exactly what was said, but just the point that tensions are rising between these nations. Could they use this as an opportunity to roll out what they call a cyber attack and blame it on one of their adversaries? I don't know. What I do know is that as a Christian, it's my job to be prepared. And it's my job to make sure that I'm not only preparing myself and my family, but that I'm doing everything that I can to also warn those around myself and, my loved ones, to help them to prepare for what is soon to break on the earth, as the spirit prophecy says, an overwhelming surprise. And so I hope that, some of the things that were mentioned today will pique our interest and will cause us to really reflect and be prepared for what we ultimately know is going to be the final crisis, and that is the mark of the beast crisis.
I want to thank Marie Diaz for just stopping by to share with us what she has unearthed from her research prayerfully. May this serve as a reminder that every single day we need to be found prepared. As Jesus says, watch and pray always, that crisis don't come upon you unawares. At this time, I'm going to ask you one thing, 2 and 3. Number 1, what point stood out to you? Put that comment below. Number 2, give this video a thumbs up if you were blessed by it, enriched by it, if it was substantive. And if you want other people to be enlightened, number 3, just kindly share this video with others. Again, thank you for making the sacrifice to stop by here at Prophesy Again and Safe to Serve TV here on YouTube. We're also streaming on several other platforms. Those links are in the description. And of course, we need to have Marie Diaz back shortly so that she can continue to share with us what God has been sharing with her, current events through the end time prophecies and the work of spiritual and practical preparation. So by God's grace, I will see you all tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern. God bless. Maranatha. I will see you all tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern. God bless. Maranatha.